Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our CSA Ideas Lab for this month. We're the CSA Innovation Network. I'm Sadie, the network coordinator, and we're so happy that you're here on the call with us today. We have Jenna and Kara here with us, joining to talk about CSA models in New York City and some lessons and experiences from that can be applied to other regions. So we're really excited to hear about building greater connection through CSA with communities. Please introduce yourself in the chat with the farmer organization and where you're joining us from. And then please keep yourself muted throughout the presentation until the Q&A portion. I'm going to give a quick introduction to the CSA Innovation Network before we get started, and then I'll hand things over to Kara to talk about Farm Generations Cooperative, and then to Jenna from the East Williamsburg CSA. We'll have time for Q&A, so make sure to send those questions through the chat or hold on to them so that you can come off mute, share your camera with us, and we'll have a group Q&A at the end of the presentation before we wrap up. So just briefly, the CSA Innovation Network is a national group collective of technical assistance providers from various organizations and academic settings across the country who all work together to support farmers, specifically working around community-supported agriculture. We have a lot of resources and tools on our website that you can find at csainnovationnetwork.org that are all centered about making CSA more successful and a viable farming model. We also are collectively working to advance more equitable models within CSA. So this presentation today is a great example of building connections with a city environment in New York City with the farmland that is in the area and supporting the consumers and the farmers holistically through CSA. And I'll pass things over to Kara now to start off with talking about Farm Generations. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us and thanks for joining everybody. I'm Kara Fravor. I work with Farm Generations Cooperative. Farm Generations Cooperative has been around since 2019, and our product, it's farmer owned, and the product is GrownBy, which is the first farmer owned software platform for local farm sales. And GrownBy really focuses on local food and food access and farm viability. And it's a sales platform that's owned by the farmers who use it, right? It's a cooperative model, and that's really important to us as farmers, as farm supporters, because we would kind of want to see the direction of that platform in the hands of the farmers who are using it. And that also means that we don't have venture capital backing. So a lot of the funding to get us started and to advance the platform is sometimes from USDA programs. So this project is brought to you by the Farmers Market Promotion Program. It was a 2022 grant with our partners NYC and Just Food. Just Food has a long history of helping to start and support CSAs in New York City. And so we're a national cooperative. And you might be like, why are they focused on CSA in this one particular city? And the reason is because we personally care about it. So Lindsay, one of our co-founders and our CEO, is half of Hardy Roots, which has been providing CSA shares into New York City for probably almost 20 years, and serves the East Williamsburg CSA. And so Lindsay is pretty supportive of this model that has helped her farm grow. I have worked for Just Food, and I have started CSAs in New York City and been members of them, and have also seen this model from all of these angles and been like, this is so cool. Why doesn't everybody know about this? And so we were kind of interested in getting the USDA to help us take a really clear snapshot of what is happening in New York City right now, and then to share that out with farmers and with folks on this call. And then, there's a software component, right? So we also developed tools within GrownBy to help support this specific model. It's helpful in lots of different ways, but the ability to kind of have core group members be able to use GrownBy and see GrownBy on the back end too. And also this CSA, as everyone on this call probably is well aware, has had ebbs and flows over the years. I was really involved in Just Food in like the early 2000s when, God, that makes me sound so super old. But when CSA was like at this amazing moment where there were more people who wanted to start sites than there even were farmers who could serve them. And that's awesome, but it's like different in 2023, which is when the survey was conducted. So we wanted to get a really clear snapshot of how farms were being supported, how core groups were being supported, etc. And before, Sadie, next slide, before I hand it over to Jenna to talk about the East Williamsburg, I want to give a quick overview of like, what am I even talking about when I say a New York City CSA? So New York City, CSAs in New York City vary from other locations in that they have these core groups of volunteers that do a lot of the legwork on the ground in the city, in the neighborhood for the farmer. So they're overseeing distribution, they're maybe doing most of the outreach, they're doing, in some cases, some of the payment managing, they're managing just all kinds of things that happen in distribution relationships with community groups and with the distribution location. So that's like what we mean when we say core group. These shares are like traditional-ish, meaning that they're not really very customizable. You can imagine that that would be pretty complicated in this setting. Some of the farmers delivering into New York City are coming from as far away as like 300 miles, right? So they're really coming far. They're delivering like a pretty set share. Sometimes these are market style, which you'll see in Jenna's description, meaning that like members can select from boxes and as opposed to having their box pre-boxed with a tag on it that says like care flavor or something. And these are pretty community focused. And when I say that, I partially mean that they sometimes are their own like autonomous entities, right? A core group, a CSA may have in New York City might call themselves the CSA, sort of separate from the farm. They may have their own name, like the East Williamsburg CSA, or like, I don't know, I shouldn't have a whole list of them, but they may have their own name. They may bring in items separate from the items that the farmer brings in. They're doing their own outreach. They manage their own website. They're like kind of their own entity. And so I'm going to give that as the framework. I'm going to hand it over to Jenna to introduce herself and talk about East Williamsburg.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm Jenna Harris. I'm from the East Williamsburg CSA. And I should start off by saying that, when Kara came to me about doing this presentation, I was shocked to hear that this is not how everyone does CSAs. I thought core groups were everywhere. So I'm very happy to share this information and hope others can take it to your own city as well. So the East Williamsburg CSA was started in 2005. We currently operate out of the Redshed Community Garden. We're in East Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I've been a member there since 2012 and on their core group since about 2019. As Kara mentioned, we partner with Hardy Roots to do distributions. We have both Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings and offer weekly or biweekly shares of veggies, fruits, eggs, and some other add-ons that I'm going to talk about a little later. So as Kara mentioned, our CSA operates with a core group, which is, a small group of volunteers that help the farm in a number of different ways. We currently have 8 active core group members in our CSA. And I guess I can go through sort of our main responsibilities. A big thing for us that we focus on is volunteer scheduling and engagement. So we use a platform called Sign Up Genius. We typically recruit between 2 and 4 volunteers for each of those distributions on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And so as a member of the core group, we're the ones that are setting up those shifts in there. We send out weekly reminders to make sure we have enough people to staff all of those distributions. We do require that all CSA members do at least 1 volunteer shift during the season, but it is kind of like pulling teeth to get people to volunteer occasionally. So we do send a lot of reminders and just kind of keep up with making sure that folks are doing those volunteer shifts. We also do some marketing within the local community. Like Kara mentioned, we're more boots on the ground, like embedded in the community. So we're hanging flyers, we leave postcards at local businesses. We try to share information with schools and other businesses if they have like an email newsletter. Just try to get the word out in the community that the CSA does exist. We also have an Instagram and a Facebook account and a website that we all manage. The core group manages ourselves as well. A big thing that I think takes away a lot of time from Hardy Roots is just answering tons and tons of questions. We get a lot of new members every year, and so we get a lot of emails and people just asking questions like, how does the CSA work? What can I expect to see in my share? So the core group answers all of those emails. You know, if we need to bring Hardy Roots in, of course we do that. But that we really are there to answer any questions that we can take on ourselves. Same with, you know, at the distributions, we get a lot of people asking, how does this work? So we're the ones there that can answer that. We also have a core group member who leads every one of the distributions. So we have a separate Sign Up Genius schedule for that. That person is there along with the volunteers just to meet the Hardy Roots truck, help unload everything, and then just stay with those volunteers during the entire shift. We donate any of our excess shares that are not picked up to a local community fridge, and that's its own separate volunteer shift. But just having a core group member on site to make sure nothing's left behind. You know, we never want to leave things in the garden for a multitude of reasons, but just having that core group member there on site to make sure that goes smoothly is super helpful. And then another thing we do, we just maintain all the supplies. So when people sign up for the CSA, they're at our CSA, they pay a membership fee. And so part of that goes towards the CSA, or excuse me, towards the core group. And we can use those funds to buy things like tables or chalkboards to put up, you know, any sort of the supplies that we need to handle those distributions throughout the season. And I know there are some core groups that have really defined roles. You know, there might be one person for each of those things. In our CSA, we have sort of two leads, myself and another person. I do a lot of the like back end work, the emails, the volunteer management, and the other member does a lot of the in-person things like supplies and marketing, and he does a lot of the distributions himself. And then the remaining 6 members, they're the ones that are leading all the other distributions throughout the season. And then the other big thing that the core group does in our CSA is to organize local add-on shares for our members. So this year we're offering granola, coffee, and empanada shares, all made from local providers. Most of them they're all within New York City. 2 of them are within Brooklyn. In the past, we've had other shares. We've had bread, oysters, microgreens, and a few other things. And they're just really fun ways to get other products out into the community, especially trying to find something really local that is being made nearby. It is a lot more work on our side. A lot of that is managed. We manage the signups ourselves. A lot of times we don't ever handle the money, but we might, you know, connect the member directly with that vendor's website or payment platform. So we try to limit it to just once a month on Saturdays, and we kind of limit how many we offer each season. But it is a really fun way to get more variety of food into the community. And so we love to do that as well. And I think with that, I'll hand it back to Kara.
Thanks. Jenna's going to say more stuff and will be like, I think probably a person that you'll have lots of questions for in the Q&A too. So we did a survey because, you know, that's like a USDA grant. It's like, what do you do on USDA grant? So we did this survey of core groups and of farmers that serve these core groups in New York City, serve these different CSA distributions in New York City. We had pretty good return from the farmers that we know we reached out to. So, or from the farms and the core groups that we know we reached out to. There's not like a comprehensive, this is a national issue, right? There's not like this comprehensive database of all CSA distribution locations. So we felt like we had pretty good feedback, but we don't know what we don't know. And of the farms that responded, it was this very interesting snapshot, right? So farms have been providing into New York City CSA sites via this model. Well, they've been providing in since 1995, right? Roxbury Farm was the first farm to take CSA shares into New York City, and Just Food has been promoting and supporting core groups since 1996. And Roxbury was a respondent on this. The average amount of time that the farms that responded to our survey have been providing into New York City was 19.5 years. So it was like we have this amazing wealth of longitudinal information from these farms. At the same time, I think that also shows that a lot of these firms are not small, right? We're talking about 1,000 members. Golden Earthworm, who responded but is on hiatus this year, is like 1,600-ish members. So like pretty, these firms have been able to scale over those years to being like fairly large, at a pretty large scale, and partially because they don't have to do that like distribution management that can happen with this core group. At the same time, I think it's sometimes hard for a smaller farmer to be able to reach it, like to start in New York City, right? Because it is like this big leap of transportation and having to have vehicles and all of that stuff. So that the role that Just Food played in the early days of really starting those relationships was, I think, pretty key. And we see fewer new farms getting into CSA necessarily in the same model now, for other reasons that we could discuss. So that we have all this feedback from core groups about their leadership roles, about the ways that they have been able to bring in new core group members and sort of carry institutional knowledge or not, like why they are committed to this model and how long they've been committed to this model, what kind of compensation core group members get. Sometimes farms offer a free share and some core groups use that to compensate core group members. Sometimes farms use that to make other shares more affordable for community members. People use it in different ways. We got a lot of information into the survey report. The survey report is, you can read it, and I encourage you to. It is 50 some pages long, so there's like a lot of information in there, and I'm just sort of scratching the surface here. But we talked a lot about how the shares are distributed and how distribution works, and like, who does which task at distribution, which I think is a really important thing for farms outside of New York City who are really interested in maybe adapting this model to fit their urban or suburban or not urban, completely rural setting, but thinking about those roles and who can do them. There was a lot, we were very interested as an online sales platform in payment, because that's like a thing that we do at GrownBy. We accept payments for CSA shares. And so we were kind of interested in how that payment task division and how tech tools work for core groups and for farmers. Increasingly, as you might guess, right, in 2004, most core groups accepted payment directly, and that has really shifted as most payments have moved online. And now farms often collect that payment themselves. However, in New York City, we also still see a couple of farms who just leave it all up to the CSA. The CSA distribution core group, that like team collects all of the payment. The farm may or may not even know the names and contact information for all of those shareholders, and they just know to drop off 200 shares at this location each week. There are farms for whom that sounds like not like that great of an idea, because they're like, but I want to know who I am like providing food for, and I want to have some control over connection with those consumers. And there's some farmers who are like, awesome, like great, I like grew this food and that was hard enough, and so I'm gonna just drop it off. And this core group can kind of do a lot of the management of the distribution. Just Food very traditionally was like very focused on the financial accessibility of CSAs. GrownBy also, Farm Generations and GrownBy is also committed to that. We are the first online farm sales platform that can accept SNAP benefits. And in addition to SNAP, there are also a lot of other ways that core groups make their shares affordable, through tiers and sliding scales, through donations and getting grants. There's a lot of that stuff is covered in a section of this survey, and we really saw that a commitment from core groups and from farms on making that a possibility within New York City, understanding that New York City is a place where it's there's a lot of income disparity, and also Just Food in helping farms find distribution locations historically really pushed for those to be in neighborhoods that were mixed income. That's not true at all of the distributions in New York City, of course, and neighborhoods change over the length of time that a CSA is in existence. But it's still a focus and a consideration for folks getting into to New York City neighborhoods to consider where are places where you can have a really mixed income CSA. There's the share of recruitment and marketing. That task is really shared between farms and core groups. But like one of the amazing pros of core groups, right, is that you can be, I think Jenny used the phrase boots on the ground, right? You could really be in part of the community where you live. You can be on your PTA, you can be part of your bike racing club, whatever. You are the people, the core group are the people in that neighborhood who live there and work there and go to church there and school there and can really do that marketing effectively. That's an incredibly hard task for a farmer to do from a distance, and especially at scale. And especially if you are also additionally trying to really recruit members of like CSA members across an income spectrum. So those are some of the tasks that some of the areas that we really highlight in the survey report. Next. So we talked a little bit about some of these big highlights, right? Farmers can't do it all. And so this is this great way of sharing these tasks. This marketing is easier because the core group really knows and is embedded in the community. Jenna talked about add-on shares. There are just, with a core group, you can really have this great variation in what's offered. I think that's great. There's this, I don't know how to exactly put a clear enough point on this, but there's like a neighborhoodness to a CSA distribution, that you have a moment to come together with people from your neighborhood who might be at different income levels, different age groups, maybe different political perspectives that have all come together for this, to all share in this one thing, to like pick up food from a farm together. And I think that is a thing that is increasingly rare, maybe in our current lives. And so I think that that's an important thing to point out as a plus to this model. And that can be really, I mean, I think East Williamsburg does a great job of it, in part because they're in a community garden. So it's like a nice place to be, as opposed to like being in like the basement of a YMCA, which could also be a great distribution location, but like a little less vibey. So I think that that's like a nice point on like the kind of community that it creates. I think this model of core groups allows more attention um, to recruiting and supporting lower income shares. Jenna, what pros do you have in addition to this list?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of yours. I think for us, a big thing, when someone comes to volunteer, whether it's a regular volunteer or on the core group, they just feel more engaged and more a part of the CSA, and they're more likely to come back and maybe sign up for add-on shares, or come do a second volunteer shift. So just having that opportunity where people can get more involved if they want to, I think is really great. I mean, I think I'm a good example. I moved out of the neighborhood like 8 years ago, but I've tried a few other CSAs, but I've just been a part of this core group and I feel so connected to it. So I keep coming back because it makes, it ties me and makes me feel really connected to it. I know, the farmers, I know Ben and Lindsay. So just having that closer connection to the farm and to the CSA, I think is a great way of keeping people engaged.
When I made this slide, I was like, we're not going to have time to talk about the cons. And anyway, who wants to hear all about that? But one of the things I'll say as a con that I think kind of goes on Jenna's pro there is that Just Food has scaled down, and this isn't a huge part of what they do now. And so core groups aren't always like there's not like a monthly workshop where they might learn how to do a thing. It doesn't have this, they don't have the same sort of institutional support. And also, so much of the management of CSAs has kind of moved online. And I mean, I'm saying that as someone who as it works for an online sales platform. But I think the fewer roles that are available at the core group and the less engagement that is almost demanded or like painstakingly pulled from members, the less engaged they feel with the site itself. And that kind of is a slippery slope to, just, I don't know, shopping from Fresh Direct. And so I think that one of the things that kind of was clear in the survey was like how much like more engagement, more conversation, more stuff that happens at the core group and from the farm can kind of create that community engagement, which creates commitment. And so that was like one of the things that really came up here that I thought was really interesting. And I think also that like length of time that we see these farms who have really grown in this model. And then we see other farms who have maybe tried to get in on a smaller scale and had a little bit more trouble, being viable, having it be financially viable to drive into the city and do drop-offs when there isn't maybe enough core group support to like bring together 100 members at a time. Oh, is someone not on mute or is that a clue to me?
That's me. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That was so old school, like you're in like an old library. Um, so those are like, I think we can talk a little bit more about what kind of troubles or challenges came up. But those are that's like one of the things that I think is kind of important to think of. Jenna, are there things that have been challenges for you as a core group member that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think similar. Actually, my pro is also kind of a con, but I think getting volunteers has become more and more challenging. Summer is always hard for anyone that's in volunteer management. Summer is like kind of the hardest time to get people, and so having so much of that work rely on the core group, who is also volunteers, and our regular volunteer members, can be tough. All of our add-on shares take a lot of extra work. All of the management that we're doing does take a decent amount of time. And so, we're really lucky that we do have a good core group at the moment, but we've gone through sort of ebbs and flows, and there's been seasons where it's kind of bare bones and we try to do the best we can, but maybe don't do as much marketing as we want because there's fewer of us, or, the distributions are a little bit harder. We don't always have someone available. So having to rely so much on volunteers can also be a challenge.
Sadie, will you click to the, yeah. So, Kat, I see your question. We'll talk about that in a second. So one of the things I want the whole world to know that this model is a possibility and to understand how it could be adapted to fit other locations. So I think that understanding kind of what roles core group members play can be like just a basic foundation. And I think even in a really like bare bones way, just having a couple of people who help oversee distribution, so that the farmer doesn't, like in a more rural or suburban setting, so that the farmer or farm staff isn't there at distribution managing that, I think can be really helpful and certainly a labor save, but also means that there's somebody to greet everyone and chat about recipes or whatever, that kind of community building that happens or sort of organically sometimes at CSA distributions. Certainly I am a member of a winter share where I live, where there's just like a pile of boxes in someone's driveway, and I just check my name off the list and take the box. I haven't met anyone else from that CSA. And so like I think there could be ways of kind of just imagining like what core group roles could be used to make more community and drop off locations outside of New York City and to sort of minimize the farm's labor requirements. I think any farmer could instate this a little bit. I did this as a farmer, knowing that this was the model that I was most sort of galvanized in as a grower, that I was then interested in having volunteers that could help oversee and help with distributions, even in a suburban setting. I think this works best with some like cohesive community group as opposed to managed by the farmer. But so, you know, if you're doing a distribution at a nonprofit, like however you can work to create that community group to help out. We talked a little bit about how volunteering creates commitment, and Jenna sort of touched on it too, right? Like once somebody has spent time at the distribution and sort of helped to answer questions or helped meet a truck and meet somebody from the farm, you know, that kind of volunteering makes people feel like this is something they really do want to be involved in a little bit more. And then I think additionally, this idea of add-on shares and partnerships can just be a lot easier with core group members. I think that's one of the takeaways from the survey report was talking a lot about add-on shares and how much farmers manage and provide add-on shares to supplement produce. Maybe they bring fruit down, maybe they bring eggs. Sometimes those are things the farm grows, sometimes those are things that the farm sources local to the farm. But that with a core group, you can really have a much more full food offering at that distribution. And that can be a great thing to kind of lean on a core group for. And you know, it also supports other food providers like other food producers that are local in any geographic region. So those are some of the kind of takeaways about adapting this model in other locations. Kat asked, is this year-round or seasonal? Like work only with local farms? Yeah, all the farms that, I can't say all the farms that responded to our survey were definitely local to New York City. And when I say local, like sometimes that is 300 miles or 250 miles. Like it can be fairly far. But year-round or seasonal, there are some farms that only provide seasonally, you know, say a 22-week season that's only from early June to Thanksgiving, for instance. And there are other farms who offer year-round shares. Usually there's like an end to the season and then a winter share, as opposed to just like 52 weeks of vegetables. That's like a little bit more of a commitment. And maybe the farm offers only smaller shares or only monthly winter shares or something like that. But we do see increasingly farms that are offering, you know, off-season, like winter options. And I don't think there's anybody doing it right now, but there are sometimes farms that are only winter. Like there have been a couple of farms who have come up in the Hudson Valleys that serve New York City that are like, oh, well, there's a lot of folks offering seasonal shares, so we'll just offer a winter share. I don't think that that's still happening, but then sometimes, you know, a site won't have a winter share option, but another local farm will be able to provide the winter share for that CSA distribution. Does that answer your question, Kat? You can also like take yourself off mute and chat with us if you want. And then Nick says Jamestown. What Jamestown? Jamestown in what state?
Jamestown, New York.
Okay, great. Which is?
Chautauqua County, way west. We're about like 20 minutes from Lake Erie, 30 minutes.
And so this is a group farmer distribution, right? So it's a collection, like multi-farm?
Yes.
You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so I run the Jamestown Farmers Market, and we also have a mobile market here in Jamestown. And for a few, we're just finishing up our 4th season of doing a CSA. And I was almost considering changing the name CSA because it's this weird group and I had never seen a model of it. And I happened to find this webinar literally yesterday, maybe this morning. So this works out perfectly. But yeah, right now we work with 2 produce farmers, 2 or 3 different meat farmers, and a local baker to provide. We have 63 produce shares and another 40 of the different add-ons, whether that be eggs and bread or a combination of all of them. And we have tried to encourage, because we run the farmers market and mobile market, we can accept SNAP through those avenues, but it becomes very challenging to coordinate, like having your iPad and your SNAP reader on CSA pickup day when we're also doing mobile market distribution. So I was wondering if you could just talk about how GrownBy processes SNAP, or are people having to create an account? I've tried to add like a Snap share on GrownBy to check out, and I couldn't get much further just because of having to create an account. But yeah, I was hoping you could just
I think Sadie could probably put a link in the chat for one of my coworkers did a ideas lab about GrownBy and Snap. And also I can connect with you offline to help out with that for sure.
Thank you.
That's processed at usually at the farm level. So the farm has to be approved by USDA to accept SNAP, as opposed to like Jenna, like the East Williamsburg CSA could not accept SNAP online with GrownBy. GrownBy, the farmer that provides to the East Williamsburg CSA would have to be able to be like the one authorized through USDA, if that makes sense. And then there's some other like funny quirks about it because of USDA rules, but it is working quite smoothly. Jenna, is there anything you want to say about your usage of like the SNAP shares that are sold at East Williamsburg?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, this is our first season, so we're still pretty new to accepting SNAP. But one thing that's big for us, one big change for us, is we now have to send back, which is really actually very easy to do in GrownBy, but we have to keep track of who does not pick up their share. Because if it's a SNAP recipient, we want to give those funds back because they did not get that food.
Yes.
So that's a big thing for us that we just, we were tracking it, of course, in the past, but now we actually have to send it back to Hardy Root so that they can keep track of it as well. But otherwise, it's been really, oh, go ahead.
You go.
I was just gonna say it's been really seamless, and we're just trying to promote it more. We only have a few this season, so it's been tough to kind of figure out how do we get people that have SNAP benefits, how do we tell them that we're even a possibility for them. So we're still working on that.
Yeah, it's been hard to even advertise it because it's like, oh, well, then we essentially need to create a system where you're paying each time you come pick up. And on distribution day, our distribution day, we're out with the mobile market. And so we only have our one Square or Snap reader is out and about. So it just becomes a whole process. So you would be able to integrate your like approval for Snap in GrownBy? Is that
yes, that's what GrownBy can do that.
Right.
Yep. And so then it's just the card is charged on the day of pickup, and the customer has to enter their PIN.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and I'm putting in the chat, sorry, I'm really bad at typing and talking at the same time, probably like most other humans, although I'm sure there are people who really have that skill down pat. But so there's a link to sign up on to like hear more about GrownBy. You can talk to me or to anybody else. If you want to just like dive into this survey for 45 minutes, I would be super excited to talk to anybody about it. But also we can help you get started and learn more about that process for getting started on Snap.
Everyone, I'm Sadie, the network coordinator.
And somebody just clicked that and is checking out the YouTube. What was I going to say about that? And Jenna kind of mentioned that. So through this grant, there were two kind of features that we added on to support CSAs in New York City. And the first was like digital sign-in sheets or electronic sign-in sheets. So that's a way for the core group or whoever's at distribution to like in real time check people off in a way that could then be recorded. You could see how much produce was donated at the end of distribution, who picked up a share, didn't. So you can like, as a farmer, follow up with customers who are maybe not always picking up, or from the CSA, from the SNAP perspective, make sure that you are refunding people who don't pick up. But that feature, that like real-time sign-in, is also really useful for a delivery route, or not for CSA, but for other things too. And so that was kind of a feature that we built that I think works really well, knowing that I don't know, as a farmer, like you have sign-in sheets and you've checked people off and then they just like are in a clump in the inside of your van somewhere and you never look at them again and you never find out why Sadie didn't come to distribution for like 4 straight weeks. And I think that's like maybe a way for the farms to like just be more in connection with the consumers in ways that are with the members in ways that are actually helpful. The other feature that we built was different admin roles. And so, which could be helpful for you, Nick, that so so that core group members can have a login to GrownBy where they can maybe see all kinds of customer information, customer contact information, get access to sign-in sheets really easily, get action like access to distribution reports, but maybe not like overall financial information for the whole farm. They don't get like your Stripe payout of $15,000 happened today. And that is just a way to involve more people in the process and bring in more folks. So in addition to that, like distribution method, there's also like admin rules for like your accountant or admin rules for your delivery people. So those were like the 2 features that were really funded by this grant to make GrownBy work better for this model, but of CSA, like offsite CSAs, and also for all kinds of other ways that it's helpful.
I just took down the slide so that people can, if you choose to turn on your video, we can see each other in gallery view, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions as well, rather than just typing things in the chat. Either is a great way to ask a question. So we've got about 15 minutes left together. We'll just need a couple to wrap up the presentation. So we have time to do Q&A as people are interested in chatting with Jenna and Kara. I can start us off with a couple of questions or continue with a couple of questions while people might still be thinking about what they want to ask or hear more of. So we've talked about SNAP and some financial accessibility within the CSA core groups model. I was also interested if you've had any awareness within NYC of any core groups who are pursuing this out of like a health incentive or like produce prescription model instead of just through like another social structure like neighborhood center or something like that. But if any medical and produce prescription underpinnings exist within this space.
I can answer that a little bit. So Glenwood, which I know Sadie's had the opportunity to visit, which is a great organization here in the Hudson Valley. Glenwood has a project called CSA as a SNAP that helps farms to collect SNAP benefits and also like incentivizes, right? Because in a lot of states there's additional money. And I'm sure that this is more on the YouTube link that Sadie shared. There's probably more information about this, but like double up bucks in New York State, those aren't available in New York City, but there's like another thing in New York City. So there's like all this extra money to help like make produce purchases or local food purchases using SNAP benefits more affordable for the consumer. And so Glenwood has this project. Sorry, that was like a long introduction. Glenwood has this project at CSA as a SNAP that does some of that work. And they have there's like one of their projects is with NYU's Langholm. Correct me, Jenna, if I'm saying it wrong. They're
I
like
think
School of Public Health.
Langdon.
Okay.
Yeah.
School of Public Health, I think, that is really helping to subsidize so that the shares can not only be purchased with SNAP money, but that their base price is less money also, and then that there are metrics taken through the course of the season. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I know that is happening through NYU at a site, I think in Sunset Park. I know that has been certainly happened anecdotally as projects are like when projects are grant funded, that's often a metric that is asked. but that I don't know that there's often I don't know that there's often been data taken as opposed to just participant sort of surveys to say, like, do you feel healthier? You know, do you feel like that answers, Sadie?
Yeah, I know we've talked before in the Innovation Network and at Ideas Labs about produce prescriptions or people really engaging in CSA as a way to pursue health as it dovetails with supporting local farms and fresh food. So I was just curious about some of that overlap within this space. And it sounds like, yeah, anecdotally, you're hearing people are pursuing it through that avenue, even if it's not maybe called produce prescriptions with the groups that are taking part. So, and that sort of leads me to another question, and this was touched on earlier in the discussion too, which is if there's any other terms besides CSA. Nick, you mentioned this too, that you're using or leaning into for marketing purposes and like explaining this to the neighborhoods or maybe newcomers who are interested in this concept. What have you found resonates if the term like CSA, community supported agriculture, isn't quite getting across to people in the way that you're looking for?
So it's just been recently like, is CSA the right word for the model that we have? Most people that we're talking to that have never been part of the program don't even know what CSA stands for. So it actually doesn't mean anything for people who, you know, you're trying to get to participate. So we've considered, you know, because we are tied with a lot of these programs are tied with the farmers market, it's farmers market member, right? Where it's like you get this box of food each week. But it's something we're playing with. I think we'll probably stick with CSA for now, but maybe it's, you know, co-op member or something along those lines that are maybe more buzzword worthy. Farm share, yeah, that would work too. Yeah, that's just we're looking into the naming of it right now. We haven't gotten that much further than saying, is this the right word?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say except, yep. Yeah, I think it's like such a long conversation. And one of the things in this New York City, context is that CSA is used to refer to the model, but it's also used to refer like to the group and to the drop off, sort of like you would say, like, I'm going to my CSA, which like I think grammatically doesn't even make any sense. And you know, here is a place where we're talking about, I don't know, maybe there are 80 or so distributions across New York City, probably far more than that. And so most of those folks are using that term. And so if you were then a member of one and you want to switch to another, like that would be a thing I don't know. It's like if in a place there's been enough movement in the direction of calling it one thing, it seems weird to switch to something else and then have to explain what farm share means or what farmers market member means. But at the same time, I think this phrase means, oh, Ruth is here, means, you know, it doesn't necessarily like hold like a really clear meaning for folks. And you know, there was a moment earlier when I was like, oh, this is like a traditional-ish share. I think this conversation about whether to use whether to use the phrase CSA gets far more complex when you're starting to talk about farms that are fully customizable or where you get like a box and you can choose what's in your box, and like because there are certain things about the shared risk and bounty that are sort of expected out of the like 1990s phrase CSA. So it's kind of like I don't know. Yes, it is a big conversation, Nick. You are right. Probably everyone on this call could be like, oh, we have talked about calling it this other thing, but then we just stuck with CSA because we haven't figured out what the other thing is.
Yeah, it's a conversation we're having nationally for sure. And was just curious if there had been any progress towards like the more communal understanding within NYC, but it sounds like with core groups being so established, like people who are interested have a general awareness of it. And we're still trying to bridge that gap to people who never heard about it. I did have another question that was submitted with the registrations, and we've talked about it a little bit, but maybe we can clarify or dig a little bit deeper for a minute on if Jenna, your group, or any of the other CSA core groups in the area have worked with like multi-farm hubs or distributors. I wonder specifically if this is something that you've seen done like with a temporal overlap where you're getting like more than one farm delivered to the core group at the same time, rather than what Kara mentioned earlier of having like a summer season and then a winter share maybe separately. And then also if any of these products within the main share or the add-ons are coming from outside of New York, or they're like citrus fruits or coffee or other like fun gourmet products that are entering the add-on, or is it still pretty like local product focused, even if it is coming from multiple farms?
Yeah, I will say, and Kara may know more if there are other farms or CSAs doing this, but for us, we really have always worked almost exclusively with Hardy Roots. They've been really good about, if they can provide fruit or enough fruit, they'll go to other farms nearby and bring it all down on the same truck, which has been really helpful. The only times that we do participate with other, or work with other farms, is those add-on shares. And we've kind of focused them mostly within New York City, just because we try to be really local about it. And we tend to hear from, like, if a new business pops up, like our coffee provider is a business that people love in the neighborhood. They reached out to us and just wanted to provide shares. So we like to be able to keep it pretty local to where we are. But we're always open to offering other shares as well. If we were to hear, we actually our oyster share, I'm sure you can imagine we can't get oysters in Brooklyn. That's not a very local thing, but they would drive out from like the East End and Long Island and bring them out Saturday mornings for us. So kind of we're open to whatever shares are available and what our members are most interested in. We do a survey at the end of every year to kind of gauge people's interest in shares for the next year. So that's also where we get some of our ideas for what add-ons to have available.
I'd add, in addition to that, so definitely what Jenna's describing happens, I think, at a number of different sites. And like coffee that's maybe roasted locally, but obviously not grown locally. Tortillas that are made locally, but not grown locally. So, what's local is kind of always up for debate also. I would also add that there's like a group of farms that sell a la carte items into New York City that's managed by Pleasant Valley Farm. That's not available at all CSA distribution sites, kind of up to the site, I think, or, the site kind of manages that. But then that's like a la carte, so that a customer isn't necessarily being like, oh, I want an egg share for 20 weeks, but I might just want some like fig jam. And so the management of delivery is managed by this kind of collection of farms. And I think that's really fun, right? Because it's like awesome to get some like lavender washed cheese, but like maybe you didn't commit to buying lavender washed cheese for like the whole season. And then additionally, there is a collective of farms that is based out of the Catskill region north of New York City called 607 that is like a multi-farm CSA in a pretty traditional sense of that. Like there's a bunch of, I think they source as a nonprofit source from 40 different farms. I'm not sure their CSA, how many farms, maybe 5 that are contributing to that base share. And that they then provide into New York City. And we work with them in other ways, but they did not contribute to this survey report. So their data isn't shown in these responses. And certainly, like, local to New York City is also all of New Jersey and Connecticut, and sometimes Massachusetts may even fall within there. I don't know of any farms in Massachusetts that serve New York City CSAs specifically, but that it could be a lot of those. Or like what's local.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering that. I really liked hearing that local businesses are aware of the CSA groups, and that's where some of the outreach and add-on products are coming from. And then a member survey is also definitely a great tactics that we know of. Typical, more traditional CSA models use that to decide on changes year over year, and it's cool to see that applied to the core group model too. If anyone has any last questions, feel free to add those in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and just wrap up here very quickly. Thank you all for coming to the Ideas Lab today. Again, this has been recorded, so we'll be able to share it out for you to share with anyone else afterwards as they're interested. We have the websites for the Innovation Network, Farm Generations, and East Williamsburg CSA available for you to check out for more information about all of these organizations. And then we'll share these slides over email as well, so you can have the links to our CSA resources. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook if you're interested in hearing about upcoming events and new resources from the network, and also all of our network partners like GrownBy, Farm Generations, the Farm Generations project report. I actually just copy this to get that in the chat too. This is what Kara has been referring to, the CSA in New York City report with all the data. You can check it out on their website and really dig into the findings from their survey and talking with the CSA groups in New York City. There's also a CSA boot camp with Farm Generations coming up tomorrow, or the first in that series. So this is a great resource for farmers. Any of you who run CSA farms can check out this series of events from Farm Generations coming up over the season and get lots of good information there. Our next CSA Ideas Lab is coming up on October 30th. So feel free to join us for that one and keep engaged with the CSA Innovation Network as we have other sessions that will be scheduled over the late fall and winter season. Thank you so much for joining us this lovely day, and I hope you all have a great fall season ahead of you.